Today I'm showing you 3 vegan snacks because once you've mastered making your own snacks, you've mastered savings at scale. You don't have these weird cravings, you know that you can make everything yourself and they taste pretty good actually. So one of them is going to be vegan ice cream or nice cream, and it tastes perfect. It tastes so good that, it's as good as it gets. We're going to have a look at kale chips, which are crispy and as crispy as you want them to be. And of course, we are going to have a look at roasted chickpeas with some smoked paprika. And if you find it remotely intriguing, please keep on watching and let's get into it. And I'm going to start with vegan ice cream or vegan ice cream. It's so good. It's made of frozen bananas. I gotta warn you though that you have to have quite a powerful blender or a food processor, otherwise you won't be able to blend the bananas properly. And another thing I want to mention is that you do have to have the bananas frozen, and please do not try to freeze the ice cream after you cook it. It will turn into ice. So this is probably the main disadvantage of cooking your plant-based ice cream at home, is the fact that you will not be able to store it for later. However, it's really fast to make, and the only thing that you need prepared is pre-frozen bananas or pre-frozen berries.
The blending is pretty straightforward. You use frozen bananas as a base for the ice cream. I added some peanut protein powder, a touch of pistachio milk or any plant-based milk, and a little bit of berries. You can also add peanut butter or tahini. Tahini makes the ice cream smooth, but be careful with the bitterness of tahini. You can actually add a little bit too much. And then you just blend.
I think one of the main things about making vegan ice cream at home is the fact that you do actually have to add some salt into it. I don't think that many people think about it, or I don't think that I thought about it previously. But once you add a pinch of salt inside, it makes everything just come together so nicely. Just don't put too much of it. But this bliss point where the sweet meets the salty is just perfect. It's so good. And of course, in order to make it fast, you would need some pre-frozen bananas. This is absolutely evident. So keep them in your fridge in case you have some cravings. You can experiment with pretty much everything. I sometimes add peanut butter powder, which is basically dehydrated peanuts, peanut butter, tahini. Tahini is just phenomenal. It's amazing. You can experiment with different kinds of plant-based milks, adding chocolate chips. It gives you a different taste every time. You can add some vanilla and other flavorings just to suit your taste. The next snack is actually kale chips. I really like this crisp on the kale chips. However, be very mindful of how long you keep them inside the oven because they can get burnt really easily. So I prefer them to be a little bit undercooked rather than overcooked when they're actually burnt.
And the process of the kale chips, we actually start with washing the kale and making sure that there are no bugs on the leaves, nothing like that. And we have to make sure that the kale is actually dry. So here you see me just drying it out. It didn't spend a night inside the towel. I just washed it and I'm just patting it dry. And here I'm just cutting the stem out and making sure that there are no bugs. Here you see the bug. That there are no bugs. I don't feel like eating bugs. So yeah, I'm just chopping off the stem and making sure that I only have the tender leaves left, because the temperature of cooking and the pace of cooking for the stem and for the leaf will be different. So with seasoning, you can pretty much experiment with it. I add a little bit of olive oil, some nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast does have this cheesy flavor. And I also add some paprika. I really love smoked paprika. things that have to be smoked have to have smoked paprika, in my opinion. I add some liquid garlic because why not? I think it goes really well with the cheesy flavor. A little bit more oil, and now we are ready to coat the kale. And now it's time to spread the kale leaves into a thin layer. If you have more kale than one baking tray can handle, just either cook them in batches or use 2 baking trays. They have to form an even layer of kale leaves so they don't cook at different times. So once you spread the sauce over it, it's pretty much ready to go into the stove. You do have to preheat the stove at around 180 degrees Celsius or 350 Fahrenheit, and then just be checking on the kales every maybe 5 to 10 minutes just to make sure they have the crisp but they're not burned. If they're black, then they're burnt, but they're not eaten. Anyway, the process of cooking can take from 10 to 20 minutes, shouldn't be more, but just keep checking onto your kale leaves inside the stove to make sure that they're not burning, that they're not fuming. It's better to have them a little bit undercooked than overcooked, and basically you will taste the coals.
And finally, we have some chickpeas, roasted chickpeas. It's especially good if you have an air fryer. Air fried chickpeas are just phenomenal, but if you're in for some roasted chickpeas, those are just fine. So if you're in for a treat which is actually quite high in protein, take a look at the roasted chickpeas. I feel like one of the secrets of making good roasted chickpeas is having them almost dry, like patted dry, before you add the sauce and before you add the glazing. So this is going to be important. Another cool thing to add is smoked paprika, definitely, because it does add this smoky flavor, smoked paprika. And if you have an air fryer, I think it's going to be just bomb, but I just don't have an air fryer, so I just have to use the oven.
So the chickpeas are pretty straightforward, you just get them. Here we start with the sauce, 3 tablespoons of water. You start mixing it all in a bowl. 1 tablespoon of date syrup, 1 and 1.5, and I'm using some nutritional yeast here. 2 to 3 tablespoons should be enough. And that's miso paste. We have around 2 teaspoons. You can use white miso paste. I'm using brown miso paste because that's what I have. 1.5 teaspoons of smoked paprika because I just love smoked paprika. That's the point where I run out of smoked paprika. Here I'm adding some liquid garlic, a little bit, not too much. I'm mixing it really well. You can also add some onion powder or some garlic powder. I just had garlic granules, which are not ideal. They wouldn't have dissolved, so you have to mix it all really well. And finally, the chickpeas. So you just spread them onto the baking tray and you get them ready for the oven, which you have to preheat at around 190 degrees Celsius, 375 Fahrenheit. And you spread the sauce or the glazing on top and make sure they cover it evenly. Oh my god, it smells so good. Oh yeah, look at that. It does seem a little bit wet, and actually the glazing may start burning inside your oven. I guess it's not the best sign, but it works for me. Yeah, just you have to make sure you stir them from time to time when it's time to cook them actually. It's time for the oven. So we put them in a preheated oven. I put them on a higher shelf, like the one that is very close to the heated element, and you have to stir them every 10 to 8 minutes, I would say, just to make sure that they're not burning. Here I'm changing the shelf. And once you stir them, you will see which ones need a little bit more roasting and which ones are just fine. But just do check on them so they're not getting burned, because the glazing can get burned, as you can see in the foils there. The whole process is likely to take up to 35 minutes max, and this is so worth it. This is such a good snack, especially if you feel like something unhealthy.
So there you have it, 3 quite easy vegan snacks that you can enjoy and binge on throughout the day, throughout your work day, after the workout, before bed, and have no guilt. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know which one was your favorite. Subscribe to the channel and support it with the like. It doesn't cost you much, but it means a lot to me. And I see you next week.